Ready for a real mind bender? Today we're taking a deep dive into the work of Bruce Lipton and this whole idea that your mind can directly affect your health. Yeah, I know, it sounds kind of far out there, right?
Yeah.
But that's why we're here. We're going to unpack the science behind it, see if it holds water. Consider this a journey for both of us. One thing I got handed Lipton, he's got a knack for taking complex stuff like cell biology and making it, well, kind of relatable. Like he compares a human cell, right, to a teeny tiny battery. Each cell, he says, has an electrical potential, about 1.4 volts. Now, on its own, not that impressive. But get this, you've got something like 50 trillion cells in your body.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it that way.
Totally. So all those cells combined.
You're practically a walking power plant.
Right. It makes you think about the body in this whole new light, like this crazy energetic system.
And you know, it's funny you should mention energy, because this whole thing kind of reminds me of, well, you know those concepts from Eastern traditions like chi or life force?
Yeah, exactly.
But what I find really interesting about Lipton's work is that he's grounding these ideas in Western science, which makes it all the more compelling, I think.
For sure. And it's not just about the electrical stuff either.
Yeah.
Lipton talks about how each cell has these tiny little organs inside them called organelles.
Right, organelles. They're like the organs in our bodies, but on a microscopic scale.
Exactly. And they all have these specialized jobs, keeping things running smoothly. It's like each cell is its own tiny universe.
A universe within a universe. And the communication and synergy between all those cells, that's what makes life possible.
So we're not just individuals, we're more like
an intricate web of interconnected ecosystems.
And Lipton's suggesting that this web, this community of cells, might be influenced by our thoughts way more than we realize. We'll get into that more in a bit. But first, let's zoom in on the role of genes in all of this, because that's where things get really fascinating. Okay, so we've got these trillions of cells all firing away, this incredible electrical network. But what's the control center? What's telling everything what to do? Well, here's where Lipton really throws a curveball. He challenges this whole idea that our genes are calling the shots.
Yeah, he's not a fan of that whole genetic determinism thing, is he?
Exactly. In fact, he says less than 5% of health issues are purely genetic, stuff like certain birth defects.
Right, so the vast majority of our health outcomes, according to Lipton,
are determined by something else entirely.
So if it's not all about our genes, then what is it? What's the missing piece?
Okay, so imagine this. You've got a blueprint.
Okay, got it. Blueprint?
And this blueprint, it's got all the instructions for, say, building a house.
Right. Detailed plans, every room, every wall.
But the blueprint alone, it doesn't just magically build the house.
Oh,
right?
No, of course not. You need builders, material.
Exactly. Someone to read those plans, interpret them, put in the work.
So you're saying our genes are like the blueprint.
Exactly. They hold the potential, the instructions, but something else has to switch them on or off, tell them which instructions to use and when.
That makes sense. Lipton calls this the signal.
Right, the signal. And he says our cells are constantly bombarded with signals from our environment, from inside our own bodies. And these signals are influencing which genes get activated.
It's like a constant conversation happening at a cellular level.
And here's where things get really wild. Lipton says our thoughts, our beliefs, even our perceptions, those things going on in our heads, they can actually act as signals, influencing our cells.
It's this whole mind-body connection thing, but on a whole other level.
Right. And this is where epigenetics comes in. Have you heard about this? Epigenetics.
Oh, yeah, epigenetics. It's like the hot topic in biology these days.
I feel like I hear about it everywhere, but I'll be honest, I'm not sure I totally get it.
Well, in a nutshell, it's about how our behaviors and our environment can actually cause changes that affect how our genes work.
So it's not about changing our DNA itself, right?
Right. It's more like having a dimmer switch for your genes.
A dimmer switch. Okay, I like that.
Yeah. So instead of changing the actual DNA sequence, these epigenetic changes can dial up or dial down the activity of certain genes.
Interesting. So Lipton's saying our thoughts are part of this whole dimmer switch thing.
Exactly. He's saying our thoughts and perceptions play a role in this epigenetic dance.
Wow. So to be clear, he's saying what we think, what we believe, all those things running through our minds all day long, they can actually affect which genes are more or less active.
That's the gist of it, yeah. It really challenges us to rethink this whole relationship between the mind and the body. We're not just passive bystanders, we're active participants in shaping our own biology.
That's a pretty radical idea.
It is, but there's a lot of research starting to back it up.
So if our thoughts can act as these signals influencing our cells, what does that mean for our health, for our well-being? how does this actually play out in the real world? Well, there's this fascinating phenomenon Lipton points to, a powerful example of this mind-body connection in action. The placebo effect.
Yeah.
The placebo effect. I mean, who hasn't heard of the placebo effect, right?
Right. It's pretty well known.
It's this wild thing where, like, just believing something will work, even if it's a sugar pill or something.
Even if it's fake, yeah.
People actually get better. Sometimes it's a huge difference, too. It's amazing.
Yeah, and there's tons of research on it across all sorts of conditions. It really shows you just how powerful the mind can be.
Totally. And Lipton's point is that the placebo effect, it's not just some fluke, some weird exception to the rule.
It's proof that our minds and bodies are intertwined.
Exactly. It shows that what we believe, what we expect, can really impact our physical health.
And you know what's even more interesting? There's the flip side of that coin, the nocebo effect.
The nocebo effect? That's a new one. What's that?
So with the placebo effect, it's positive beliefs leading to positive outcomes, right? The nocebo effect is like the opposite. Negative beliefs causing negative effects.
So, like, if you believe you're going to get sick,
or that a treatment will have bad side effects.
you're more likely to actually experience those things.
Exactly. Even if there's no real physical reason for it.
Wow. So it's like our minds can actually make us sick.
In a way, yeah. Our expectations can create self-fulfilling prophecies. And Lipton links this to stress, too.
Stress, right. Because if you're constantly thinking negative thoughts, worrying about things,
Your body goes into that fight or flight mode.
and if you're stressed out all the time, your body thinks there's always danger, right?
Right. And that's when those stress hormones like cortisol start flooding your system.
Which isn't good long term.
No.
Not at all.
Over time, that chronic stress, it takes a toll. It messes with your immune system, throws other bodily functions out of whack.
So basically, stress makes us more vulnerable to getting sick.
Pretty much. And Lipton's argument is that a lot of this chronic stress, it stems from our own negative thought patterns. We get stuck in those loops of worry and fear.
And then those thoughts start to manifest physically.
Exactly.
It's kind of scary when you think about it, how much power our thoughts might have.
It is pretty mind-blowing.
He even talks about Prozac, the antidepressant.
Yeah, what about it?
Well, he points to research that suggests Prozac is often no more effective than a placebo when it comes to treating depression.
Interesting.
And his point is, maybe it's not just the chemical itself that's making people feel better. Maybe it's the belief attached to it. You take this pill, you believe it's going to help.
And that belief itself triggers some kind of change.
Yeah, exactly.
That really makes you think, like how much of what we experience is influenced by what we believe?
For sure. And, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, haven't we? We talked about cells being like these interconnected systems.
Right, and how our thoughts might actually influence our genes.
And the whole placebo effect, how powerful our beliefs can be.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's clear that this mind-body connection, it's not just some woo-woo concept. There's real science behind it.
It's a whole new way of looking at health and well-being.
Exactly. Lipton's work, it challenges us to rethink this whole idea of our genes being our destiny. We have more power than we realize to influence our own health, our own lives.
It's empowering in a way, but also a little daunting. Like if our thoughts are so powerful, we better be careful what we think, right?
For sure. But it's not about blaming ourselves for getting sick either.
No, absolutely not. It's more about being mindful, more aware of that connection between our minds and bodies.
Right. Paying attention to our thoughts, our beliefs.
And seeing how they might be impacting our health, for better or for worse.
Well said. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive. We hope you found it as fascinating as we did. And who knows, maybe it even sparks some new ideas, some new ways of thinking about your own health and well-being. Until next time, keep those minds curious.